I see we're going to have good participation. Okay, all right. The meeting will now come to order. May I have the roll call, please? I see we're going to have good participation. Okay, all right. The meeting will now come to order. May I have the roll call, please?
Trustee Bloma?
Yes.
We're going to have good participation. Trustee Henderson?
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Here.
The meeting will now come to order. May I have the roll call, please?
Trustee Bloma?
Yes. We're going to have good participation.
Trustee Henderson?
Lupe, we are having feedback. The recording's repeating itself. We cannot hear you or the roll call.
Yes. We're going to have good participation.
I think the playback is coming from Lupe.
Lupe, we are having feedback. The recording's repeating itself. We cannot hear you or the roll call.
Yeah, I thought it was just me. I was like, what is
I thought it was
happening?
me.
Yeah.
What's happening? I'm confused.
I think we're just having some technical issues on Lupe's side. So we are having a slight staffing issue within the office. So she's coordinated it also. We'll just be 74.5%, a little more patient.
It looks like the YouTube feed
staffing issue
is
within the office. So
it's
she's
bouncing back.
coordinated also. Deputy Chancellor, do you think we're okay?
We need Lupe to do the roll call. Apparently, the technical issue is on her end. It's probably, she seems to be picking up the live feed afterwards and it's playing back through her audio. So Lupe, would you please try to unmute and try to do the roll call, please?
If not, if she's having an issue, are we still recording? And I could do the roll call, or Deputy Chancellor, do you want to take that role, or the Chancellor?
We are recording. If you would like me to do the roll call, I can do the roll call.
And I could do the roll call, or Deputy Chancellor, do you want to take that role, or the Chancellor?
Okay, it's obvious that the error is an audio error on Lupe's end, so I'll proceed with the roll call. Student Trustee Callahan.
Present.
Trustee Buelna.
Present.
Let's see, Trustee, let's see, which one's next? Trustee Henderson. Trustee Hoffman.
Here.
Trustee Eno.
present.
Let's see, Trustee Moreno.
Here.
And
Veras.
Trustee Vella.
Here.
And Trustee Veras.
Here.
Okay. We're Deputy Chancellor, we'll call it, you got an A for that, a 95%. You did awesome though. We'll move on to the flag salute. Student Trustee, could you help us out with the flag salute today?
How would I be leading?
Oh, you know what? I'll go ahead and do it. No worries. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My apologies, Student Trustee. I shouldn't have done that so randomly, but I can never call on Trustee Hoffman again. All right. Approval of the agenda. Before we move to approve the agenda, Chancellor, are there any changes to the agenda?
None, sir. We would like to discuss it as presented.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? And give me 1 second. And with the trustees, if you could enunciate a little clearer, since we're not in person, I don't have that part. So who motioned?
Kelsey.
Okay, Trustee Eno. A motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Henderson.
Student trustee, second. Thank you, trustee Henderson. Roll call. Deputy Chancellor.
Dr. Nish, you're muted. Dr. Nish, okay, there you go.
Sorry, I needed to unmute. Student trustee Callahan,
Yes.
trustee Buono,
Yes.
trustee Henderson, trustee Henderson is muted.
You're
Can you give a
muted.
thumbs up?
She said,
Yeah, she said
You.
yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
yes.
trustee Eno,
Yes.
trustee Moreno,
Yes.
trustee Vella,
Yes.
and trustee Veras.
Yes, we're here.
Are there any persons signed up to address the Board of Trustees regarding open agenda items, which we only have one agenda item today? Do we know if we have speakers?
President Buelna, we did not have speakers sign up in advance. We do have 29 attendees. I do not see any hands up amongst the attendees. I have one hand up for Blanca Barajas, president of CMA.
Okay, then seeing that we only have one, we'll leave the 3-minute number there. So go ahead if you could admit her, so she can give her comment.
She has joined the panel.
Okay. Ma'am, you have 3 minutes. Number there. So go ahead if you could admit her, so she can give her comment.
She has joined the panel.
Okay.
Lupe, please mute.
3 minutes. Number there.
Good morning, Chancellor Rodriguez, Board President Buelna, and Board of Trustees and Deputy Chancellor. I am Blanca Barajas, President of the Classified Management Association. I am here this morning to apprise the board that the CMA supports the ratification of the General Law Enforcement and Security Services Agreement with the County of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Community College District. One of the unique beauties of the Los Angeles Community College District is the opportunity it has to provide an array of educational and professional opportunities at diverse communities from Wilmington to Sylmar, Monterey Park to Woodland Hills, in downtown Los Angeles and communities in between. The LACCD's Educational Service Center and LA Trade Tech are housed in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, surrounded by a myriad of external factors that are both ever-changing and unpredictable when it comes to addressing issues of security and safety. Regardless of their work location, my fellow classified managers have expressed and reiterated their continued desire to feel as secure and safe as possible while on campus or at the ESC. Given the moment in time that we, as a nation, are unfortunately living through with the recent acts of gun violence in schools, grocery stores, medical offices, and places of worship, now more than ever is the time when we are counting on you, our LACCD leadership, to make our safety your priority. With all of the recent active shooter concerns, we believe the sheriffs have the law enforcement training to handle, manage, and control the situation in case it ever occurs at one of our district facilities. They have the unique ability to coordinate seamlessly with other law enforcement entities for situations that borders our colleges. The sheriffs also provide other services like the required Clear React reporting needs. In addition to the sheriff's ability to respond to active shooter and emergency situations, the CMA believes the changes negotiated in the proposed new contract meet most of the concerns that have been expressed by the campuses. These include an additional body that will provide oversight to ensure the Sheriff's Department complies with the provisions of Appendix A, which reflect requirements included in the RFP that address accountability and performance measures, as well as how the sheriffs engage with the community to the uniforms they're going to wear. The ESC, located in downtown Los Angeles, is the work location of the majority of the district's classified managers. The sheriff's presence at the ESC is viewed by the managers as very positive and deemed adequate security as not a luxury, but a necessity. For my colleagues at the ESC, the presence of an armed deputy is reassuring to everyone, and they have always had positive interactions with the sheriff. They feel that now is not the time to experiment with a new security vendor. The colleges in ESC don't simply need a security company. We need diverse services to protect and promote a safe environment for our students and employees.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
For your time.
3 minutes. Okay. Deputy Chancellor, is there any other speaker?
No one else has raised their hand, sir.
Okay. Seeing none, moving on to agenda item number 1. Dr. Rodriguez will give a brief overview of business item number 1. That item is authorized general law enforcement and security service agreement with the County of Los Angeles and Los Angeles Community College District. Total net not to exceed $25,441,618. Dr. Rodriguez, I'm going to defer to you and staff to respond to questions from board members.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wilna, members of the board. Good morning, members of the public, our colleagues throughout LACCD. Welcome, and again, good morning to you all. This morning we have a responsive proposal and a formal action item that we're asking the board to consider related to RFP 2010, which provides district safety and security services at all 9 LACCD colleges, educational centers, and at the Educational Services Center. This is essentially 18 months in the works, and we've now come to a culminating moment where we're asking you to consider this particular item. So if we go to the next part, here's what we're due today, members of the board. I'll set some context for the discussion today. Dr. Nish, who will give us some significant background on this particular proposal, its history and background, just to give folks a sense of where we have come from, what we have done, and the due diligence that we have been engaged in over the last 18 months. Our Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, Jeanette Gordon, will talk about the budget. And I've asked Ms. Gordon to look back about 10 years and to see where this kind of, where the sheriff's contract and campus safety and security services, where it rates in the last 10 years with respect to our overall unrestricted funds and the percentage, if you will, of the cost associated, to see if we have any trend lines that we could draw from that. So that's an important piece. The budget how does that fit in? Then the bulk of the presentation will be handled by Chief Ed Medrano. Chief Medrano has been significant in our preparation of the RFP. He's also been an expert in the calculation of the actual contract itself. We're going to go over some very, very specific and dive into the actual specifics of the contract that includes the program services, the service requirements, the proof of what we describe as a capability, and a really important aspect called accountability in terms of how we make sure that we move through this. And then at the end, I will provide a summary of what we discussed and then our formal recommendation to the board. I want to make sure that as we begin this conversation, that the board is fully aware that at your direction and at the direction of our campus colleagues, and as a result of the multiple conversations that we have had over the last 18 months in particular, that this contract, we believe, envisions a new kind of partnership with the new service philosophy of community college safety, security, community engagement, and whatnot. And we hope that at the end of our presentation today, we will substantiate that. Next slide, please. Clearly, we have been informed by what has been occurring throughout the country. In the spring of 2020, not only did we all have to adjust to the effects of the pandemic by going completely remote, but also the country was engaged in its own issues around policing, community engagement, and racial equity. We responded at LACCD by putting together a document that you have formally adopted called the LACCD Racial Equity and Social Justice Framework, which spells out very specific action steps to be a more academically and socially just academic community, and one that emphasizes anti-racism. within that particular framework, we do talk about and have an expectation for our campus safety and security. So this framework clearly informs our general thinking about our district expectations and whatnot. So I want to make sure that we have that sort of in front of you. I want to make sure that as we start looking at our expectations and whatnot, that to repeat that this current contract ends on June 30th of 2020. And we're trying to here negotiate a 5-year agreement with LASD. And I want to underscore that this model is really a community policing service model that is a significant departure from the previous contracts that we've had with LASD over the last 20 years, and one that again provides safety and security to all of our district sites. This agreement, we believe, assures a 21st century professional security and safety services model that is grounded in the principle of community policing, where we emphasize a partnership that is directed by the district. This new agreement assures that this scope of work, as is detailed in the RFP, is met. We emphasize community policing, training, and professional development to address and eliminate implicit bias, a strong need for an equity-minded approach to safety and security, with a commitment to de-escalation. And furthermore, this RFP itself is the culmination of the assessment of the district safety environment, the security environment, and that what Dr. Nisha will talk about here. So it really is, if you recall back in December of 2020, when we were looking at this very carefully, before we put out the RFP, the board was very clear. Let's do a district-wide campus safety assessment and let that assessment inform the RFP. That has indeed occurred. The elements of that assessment are in this particular RFP, and the LASD has been responsive to what we're asking them to do. So I want to make sure that we are all on board with that piece of it. So as we move forward, the last thing I will mention before we get into some of the background is that the board asked us to ensure that there was important, consistent, and overall sort of campus engagement, that there was stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders would have an opportunity to weigh in, to discuss their views. You've heard one of the comments from our CMA this morning, but we also have a district-wide security and safety oversight committee, representative of the multiple constituencies and voices that represents LACCD, that had an opportunity to weigh in, and many of them were also part of the actual proposal review, scoring, and ultimately recommendation process. I mentioned the expert resources that we've had at our hand, if you will, to help support and guide this particular SOW or scope of work and RFP development and process itself. So that's a little bit of the tee up as to where we are at. Let's go ahead and look back a little bit before we move forward. Again, I'll ask a Deputy Chancellor to move forward with the background. Then Ms. Gordon will talk about the budget. Chief Medrano will get into the specifics of the contract itself. We'll talk about the contract termination if we need. Dr. Nish will handle that piece. Then I will close out with a very quick summary and then our recommendation to the board. So Dr. Nish, I'll take it from here, please.
Thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez. And I will be brief. Just to remind everyone, we have had over 20 years of history with the Sheriff's Department under JPA, Joint Powers Authority, with a contract that was renewed every 5 years. When that came due in 2020, and due to the pandemic and the desire to reduce the deployment, the board gave direction to renew that contract only for a year, to conduct, as the Chancellor stated, an assessment, and then move into a different type of procurement process, namely an RFP. When that assessment was done, I'd like to remind everyone that there was a significant amount of information gathering throughout our LACCD community. There were 11 forums, one for every site, and also one specially just for students. There were 8 focus groups for all of our unions and other constituency groups, and over 7,800 folks responded to the survey. In all of those information gathering venues, There was a clear majority that the respondents preferred an armed, sworn safety and security service. In fact, over 76% of the respondents to the survey listed this as their number one choice. But there also was a clear majority of respondents in all venues that they preferred a community policing approach, a protective guardian approach versus a type of hardened or militaristic warrior approach. Of course, you recall that using our Hillard Hines consultants, they presented this assessment to you. They told us that we needed to do some legwork before we could get the RFP together. Namely, we needed to do a quick development of a log that was consistent across all of our campuses so we could determine an accurate deployment, which was done. And then we included a board ad hoc committee, which consisted of trustees Vela and Henderson, that helped us finalize the scope of work that was in the RFP. As you know, we had a successful RFP process. We had 4 responsive proposals. We presented these findings to you at your April 13th meeting, at which time you directed us to negotiate with the Sheriff's Department, but you did not authorize their proposed bid of $29.2 million. Rather, staff was directed to make all efforts to reduce that cost, but maintain the full scope of work. At your June 1st meeting, we presented a successfully negotiated new contract at a total cost of $25.4 million. Of course, as you know, that item was continued for discussion today, giving us the opportunity to discuss this in more detail with you. I will now ask our Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Jeanette Gordon, to walk you through the base contract costs over the past decade. Ms. Gordon?
Good morning. For your information, we've pulled together data showing the cost of this sheriff's contract for the past 10 years. We started this in 2003, and at that time, the cost was $10 million. All the time that we've been working with the Sheriff's Department, it's been in partnership because we were their first experience with the Community College Bureau, and they sort of patterned their whole operation after us. If you look at the annual contract expense, you'll notice that the annual increases were between 4% and 5% until we got into year 15, 16. And at that time, I think we added a heat operation into the contract, which increased the number of officers. We went from 148 officers to 155. And then the next year, you see the increase was more because the contract was a calendar year, and we only put half of the increase in 15, 16, and the rest went into 16, 17. And that's what caused that jump in the increase in the contract. But you'll notice over the subsequent years, it's still around between 4% and 5% increase until we get to the pandemic year where it went down when we reduced our services there. We actually, in the year 21, 22, we're down to 143 officers. The main thing I want to point out is if you look at the bottom line, our unrestricted general fund, this contract has been right around 3% consistently throughout the years, and we're projecting with this new contract, it will still be in that same category, approximately 3% of our unrestricted general fund balance. And if there are no questions, that is basically the report.
Chancellor? Give me 1 second, Trustee Vettis. Yes. Chancellor?
Yes, sir.
Urquhart, since I delegated the questioning to you, are you going to take questions intermittently or at the end? Because I noticed Trustee Vettis had his hand up.
Yes, if it's a clarifying question, Mr. Vettis, happy to respond to that now quickly, but if it's
yes, sir. It's on this slide.
Go ahead, please.
So can you on the 2016-17, because that is essentially, and I know Ms. Gordon, you presented it as a very regular sort of cost escalation. I think that sort of reflects raises and labor cost and contracts with deputy sheriffs, but we have a milestone at 16-17, and I believe that was because of district specific requests.
Yes.
Can you confirm that and what those specific requests were, and if those are, current and permanently in place? And I will say the 20 to 21 and 21-22 declines were also at the district request, but all the other pieces were components of staffing that were per their contract, except for the special request for the district, or that the district made on our behalf. Is that right? And can you clarify that, please?
That is correct. There were negotiations beginning in 15-16 to add the heat operation to our contract. And as I said, because the contract is annual calendar year and we were dealing with fiscal year, when we increased the number of officers, you only got half of the cost in 15-16. That's why that increase was 9.92%. But when we got into 16-17, we had the total annual cost of the additional officers. And that's why it went up for the 12%.
And the HEAT program, can somebody describe what the HEAT program is as opposed to services, and if it's in this current RFP?
I'm going to defer to Deputy Chancellor Nish to describe that program.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. The HEAT team was specifically negotiated at the request of the district. This is a mental health focused team that is specific to the Community College Bureau. It requires extra deputies and officers, and that was the increase in deployment to furnish those mental health services. The HEAT team was eliminated in the reduced deployment contract that the board approved in December of 2020. However, the HEAT team is included in this new proposal before you.
Yes. And thank you. Before turning, thank you. Any more questions, Mr. Vettis?
Student trustee had a question as well.
Counselor, I'd like to ask this point, but later at the end when you're taking questions about the approach of HEAT here versus HEAT somewhere else. But you can make that notation and talk about it after.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Student trustee has a question.
Oh, just clarification. Will the HEAT program also be discussed within this presentation?
Yes, well, we can during the Q&A period. Yeah, and it is included within the current contract. So in fact, that's a good point of transition to Chief Medrano. So let's get into the details now of the contract itself, what it indeed projects for services and whatnot. So Chief Medrano, please take it from here. And if there's an opportunity to emphasize the mental health component of this responsive proposal, please underscore that point. Chief, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, trustees. My role here is going to explain the scope of work and how that relates to what's in the proposed contract. So I'll first start off by discussing the scope.
Chief Medrano, just to clarify, you were hired by the district to be an independent voice, correct? You're not connected with the sheriff, just for those to hear from that.
That's correct. I am a consultant working for the district.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everyone understands you're not part of the sheriff. You're part of us hiring you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
Yes. So my role is to explain the scope of work that was developed collaboratively with a lot of stakeholders, including 2 trustees. In that RFP scope of work, there was a total of 62 elements that were identified. And in those elements that were very specific, related to the feedback we got from a number of different things, the assessment being one of them, stakeholder engagement being others, trustee participation, a variety of different elements went into the development of the scope of work. The scope of work was rather robust, and as a result, 62 elements were created. In this contract, all but one of those elements is included. And the only element that was not included is the district asked for autonomous type capabilities for patrolling. And although the sheriffs were responsive in the RFP, it may be a little bit ahead of its time, and it's something we may want to look at later on in the future, but that wasn't specifically addressed in this contract provision. That's the only component of the requirement. So I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'm going to pick and choose some of the ones I think that are most important and have been a subject of discussion. The first is, how is supervision and management over this entire contract provided? The contract works under the Community College Bureau, which is led by a sheriff's captain. There are 2 lieutenants, one in operations and one administration, along with a variety of other folks. The contract works under the control of a commander and then an assistant chief in the sheriff's department. So there's plenty of supervision and oversight that has been identified in this contract and the response. So when we talk about mental health and homeless outreach, and this is an area that came up, there's 2 things that are interesting here. And the first is that they need to come up with a strategic plan and operational guidelines, which are not currently in place, specifically addressing the homeless and mentally ill individuals in and around the campuses with 120 days of the contract. In addition, the Sheriff's Department is not fully ramping up the HEAP program. There's only 1 deputy and a clinician assigned who will provide additional services along with current services that will begin sort of a mental health evaluation team ramp deputy that will be assigned to centralize services and respond throughout the district, on a case-by-case basis, and to do more longer-term state case management with students that is currently not present. Next slide. One of the areas, and I think that this is really important, is that the sheriffs are going to be required to establish and maintain a formalized campus engagement program that includes, student, employee, and community safety priorities. There is no current plan. It's certainly done ad hoc. And what this will allow is for the district to work collaboratively with the Sheriff's Department to formalize a plan that is reflective of what the district wants in terms of community engagement and how, and specifically how, the district would like services provided. In the contract, it's very clear that the Sheriff's Department must work with college presidents as well as the district leadership to be flexible in the delivery of services as needed for the culture and requirements of each campus. This will help us provide a framework that we're working on with measurable outcomes so that we can go back, and should be considered as one of the accountability pieces in this overall contract. And I'll talk a little bit about accountability towards the end, but it's certainly one of the main components to look back against and see if they're hitting the benchmarks. So engaging not only the campus community, but as well as the surrounding areas is very important. So there's a couple things here in the contract that provide benchmarks against that. One, as already mentioned, the formalized engagement program. 2, there's establishment of metrics that align with the community engagement and LACCD priorities. And these metrics include a variety of things, a number of assists they provide, town halls, staff engagements. Those will all be included in reporting, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. And as I already mentioned, the Sheriff's Department must accommodate the preferences of the college presidents in the district to deliver services. The next item is to ability to coordinate, direct, and participate in town hall meetings, safety escorts, interactions with students and facilities. LASD must provide a campus engagement plan and annual reports to show what they're doing, in addition to training that they're going to be providing at all of the campuses on an ongoing basis. So the established performance metrics that align with the community engagement and the safety priorities. Once again, the performance metrics are going to be essentially taken from the monthly and 2 annual reports that are going to be produced. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the reports because I don't want to go into them here, but they are pretty substantial. Next slide. So the ability to provide safety and security training to the community, college community, LASD is required to provide ongoing safety and security training curriculum. They have recently completed a series of training on all of the campuses on safety and de-escalation, which was well received by the campus communities. This will be ongoing and also tracked in the monthly reports. The next item is having to integrate a cadet program or safety intern program was the requirement. The sheriffs responded by providing a pretty robust response to this by creating a formalized cadet program with their assumption of all responsibilities to maintain this unarmed cadet program, including sort of 3 pathways for ongoing promotion. So there's not just one cadet program. You start as a cadet 1, you go to cadet 2, you go to cadet 3. So there's some progression in there. The reason that was considered is because they're concerned to try to make sure that they retain. Under this model, college students have priority. They will be recruiting strictly from the college campuses, and college students at any of the campuses can apply to this cadet program. Next slide. So as mentioned, and this was a concern about how we are responding to the needs of our unhoused student population and the use of college facilities. This must be included in the strategic plan to address homeless and mentally ill individuals, and the district can provide its input on how they want those procedures and operationally how that will work to ensure that it's aligned with the district's goals and culture. The next is the ability to deploy electronic reporting software to produce daily, weekly, and monthly statistical reports. This has been an area where the reporting from the Sheriff's Department to the district has had some gaps. And quite frankly, we've worked towards fixing those gaps. But within 90 days of initiating a contract, they're going to have to produce that level of data to ensure that all of the metrics in the monthly reports are obtainable. And that's going to require a lift on their part to align their computer-aided dispatch, as well as a records management system, the ability to provide the statistical data that we need to provide metrics to measure against. This, in addition to that, is a case management system. This is similar to the other provision. Once again, their computer-aided dispatch and records management system are going to have to work together to produce those reports. I will mention that the reports take up pages 7 through 13 of Appendix A. And if you've had a chance to look at those appendices, that it's quite robust in terms of reporting procedures, in that it takes that many pages. And once again, this is the same area here. We've covered reporting in so many different requirements to ensure that all of the data that we need to ensure that they're being efficient, effective, and good, and good stewards of the relationship, and ensuring that they're doing what we're asking is covered in a number of different methods. One unique new thing that is being added that has not been done before is the district will be installing electronic patrol check software. I don't believe the Sheriff's Department uses this anywhere else. This will allow the district to tell the employees under this contract where we would like them to be and where. This has been an issue that had been discussed with the college presidents and VPs with respect to how do we know they were patrolling as designed in the areas that we want them to design, so we can specifically ask them to be at certain locations and ensure through the use of this system that they have checked in those locations. This is quite often used in the private sector safety area, but it's going to be new for public agency to do this. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity for allow us to tailor their patrol routes and tailor their activity levels for the needs of the campuses. So this capacity here is to and it seems fairly straightforward that they have to provide 24/7, 365 days a year with scalability to include relief factor. And I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about relief factor. All of the previous contracts that the Sheriff's Department have had with the district do not provide for relief factor. And that means when a person is not there and there is not hours within the contract to backfill that position goes unfilled. When you are running a 24-hour, 365 staffing model, it is necessary to have relief factor. As we all know, there's a variety of reasons people are off. They take PTO, they are off sick, they have to do training, there's other things. And this has been an issue at all of the college campuses, in particular during early morning shift and weekend where most people are likely to take time off. This will provide that the deployment matrix has a set number of minimum staffing at every college campus, and you will have deputies required to be at all college campuses during day watch, during the PM shift, and at night there's 3 security officers with 2 deputy rovers. This is a significant increase in the staffing model, and one that the district hasn't had. Quite frankly, this is one of the drivers of cost, but this is something that the district wanted to ensure that we had a minimum staffing level at each campus, and that it will provide consistent staffing that we can audit against to ensure that in other words, there's no excuse to say why we can do certain things, because we know what the staffing model is on each campus, and we can draw against that staffing model to address inconsistencies. Okay, next slide. So this is essentially that that each college will have personnel assigned to them consistently and not moved around. This staffing model provides for minimum staffing and also includes a team leader for each campus. But in this model, it's a little different. The team leader is not considered part of the minimum staffing. So those team leaders should be not only handling the administrative responsibilities, but being more available for college presidents and VPs of administration to be, conduit for whatever they need. And this was strategically done to ensure that the level of service and response at each of the campuses by the team leaders is going to be effective, and there's no excuse that the team leader is being used from some other type of ancillary assignment. And overall, I think this is going to be a positive move in terms of accountability related to the service-related levels at each campus. All of the employees working under this contract will be required to provide and wear body-worn video, and the district required that a video management system is going to be made accessible for their use. The district has, as one of the requirements under the assessment, the district intends to establish a security operations center, which will run 24 hours, 7 days a week, which will centralize communications, dispatching, as well as basically the coordination of data, cameras, alarm systems, everything that's currently be done disparate at each campus. The sheriffs will have to work collaboratively to establish this and to man it with the district. This goes along with using their CAD and RMS system to once again provide data for the reporting purposes to the district. Next slide. The Sheriff's Department has already provided special event security for the district. This capability is already being met. In addition to the services that the Sheriff's Department provides under CCB, the Emergency Operations Bureau is often there to provide assistance. A good example is the large football game at ELAC, where EOB rolled out their large-scale EOC with all the support personnel. Those are not additional charges to the district. They've been provided as ancillary support to CCB. That also includes bomb detection canines and those kind of resources. The district's going to be, the Sheriff's Department will have to be responsible, especially with the operation of a SOC, to monitor all of access control systems, intrusion detection systems, video systems, and the new video, hopefully video analytics that we intend to bring to the district. The Sheriff's Department will be trained, although those systems will be owned and maintained by the district. The Sheriff's Department will be the primary users and be responsible for their use. The All of the Sheriff's Department will be provided, and who has not already been provided, use of force, de-escalation, mental health, implicit bias, procedural justice training. The Sheriff's Department will provide accurate records that all of them received those. All of the employees assigned to this contract have received that training when working in the district. So when we're talking about accountability, I wanted to bring a couple things up. And first, in terms of accountability, the district will have a number of performance measures, and the performance measures are really captured in the monthly reporting. As mentioned already in Appendix A, pages 7 through 13 provide a long list of detailed reporting that is required. But some of as a snapshot, the monthly report, which is due no less than 7 days after the beginning of the month, includes, a breakdown of criminal activity, crime stats in the campus, what kind of enforcement activity and/or arrest. The enforcement activity on the campus is very, very low, and arrest of folks is I have, in almost a year here, I've not seen arrest of students related to proactive activity. It's mainly folks that are coming onto the campus. Clery Act recording, any injuries, how they're responding to calls, how long it takes them to get there, how long they're there, how efficient are they with their use. Safety and security finding and audits, I've already implemented that with them in terms of reporting monthly security gaps. It could be anything from a camera out to even risk management items where there could be a potential, trip and fall situation or anything like that. Those are monthly reported. Parking enforcement actions, all the district is not currently doing that. Any student assistance to staff and students, escorts, requests for assistance, all of those things. How many trainings they provided and how many presentations, as well as the mental health and homeless engagement activities, which correspond to their homeless and engagement plan. Next slide. On an annual basis, the same thing happens, other than with the respect of, we're going to aggregate all the data from all of those monthly reports. I'll start off by saying that. So you'll get an annualized view of the data I just mentioned. Clery Act reporting, of course, is an annual requirement that the sheriffs has been helping with. CEPTID is crime prevention through environmental design and safety audit results. Those are as a result of those monthly reports that I just mentioned, and identifying proactively gaps in safety and security issues. A recap of all of the investigative activities, because there are investigators assigned to this contract working strictly for CCB. That's the only caseload that they get. So they will be providing recap of their investigative activities. All of their annual internal audit inspections, the summary of staff training, which will focus highly on those areas we mentioned in terms that were identified in the scope of work. And this was brought up, I think, at the last meeting, how many complaints against their personnel have come in for the district, as well as if there's been any commendations from personnel. The demographics of who's currently assigned to CCB of all of their employees. The requirements under this contract require for a randomized service audits. There's going to be a summary of what those audits have revealed relative to service provided by the Sheriff's Department, and the summary of the mental health activities that have occurred, how many people were assisted, what some of the outcomes, those things. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So with, go back one. So just a couple additional requirements. The Sheriff's Department has to, by no later than September, to back up a little bit, the Sheriff's Department are integral responders in an emergency preparedness situation. So as a result, they'll be working closely with the district's emergency preparedness personnel, and they're going to have to provide a recap of what emergency preparedness and disaster drills were provided to their personnel and students and employees, which also includes what collaborative training that was done with the district, the summary of disaster training, and making sure that everyone is compliant with the training, and each college incident plan shall be reviewed. And that means each college has its own incident plan. So each year, they're going to have to go through 9 plans to ensure that there's anything that they have input on has been addressed. Talk a couple little things that are kind of interesting. Under this contract, we heard clearly that we wanted a more low-key approach to safety in the campuses. We've even gone down to the granular level. We're requiring all of them to wear polo shirts and sort of a relaxed cargo pants. Some of that has been implemented, but I would say about 60% of the people do that now because it's not required under this contract. It is required that they all have that sort of lower key uniform. In this contract, there's a variety of different vehicles that are used across campuses. The sheriffs are going to have to purchase all of their own carts and vehicles to be consistent and to provide sort of a more low key campus patrol approach. As I mentioned, we have the electronic patrol check-in. I've mentioned a lot of those different things that are due within the 90 or 120 days. I'll just add to one on the bottom. Within 120 days, the Sheriff's Department has to do a complete risk assessment report on each site. This has not been done. This is going to be a substantial lift. And as we know what's going on in throughout the country, this I think will be very helpful to the district to ensure that any substantial risks are identified throughout the district. Last slide. And this concludes my portion of it. I think we're going to go on to Dr. Nish next.
Yes, thank you, Chief Medrano. Just one quick, excuse me, Chancellor Rodriguez, our student trustee, has his hand up.
The student trustee Callahan, we have about 4 slides or 3 slides left to go. Is there a clarification question?
Clarification, but I can wait to the end.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll come to you first. Thank you, sir. The deputy, go ahead, please.
Thank you, trustee. Just quickly, we have also improved the termination rights in this contract. We have 3 different types of termination. As of July 1, which is when our fiscal year starts and when the new rates actually start of each year, we have either party may give a 120-day notice for no cause to terminate the contract. At any point in time during the year, either party could give a 180-day notice to terminate with no cause. This allows us to have more time so that if there is a termination of the contract, we can attempt to achieve a good transition into another provider, which is simply not possible in a 30-day time period. Additionally, because there are increases in rates due to the county cost recovery model, the district has the right upon receipt of any increase in any rate to give the Sheriff's Department a 60-day notice to terminate the contract. So this does improve the termination rights for actually both parties. And now I'd like to ask the Chancellor to please summarize our presentation and review the board action.
Thank you, Dr. Nish. So in summary here, I hope the board has heard and members of the public. I know there's a lot of detail that was described today. Associated with this public agenda item, we did attach the actual proposed contract and the appendices. So if the public is interested in the rich detail that was outlined today, we draw your attention to that. The board has received that information clearly as well beforehand. But in summary here, we have indeed spent the last couple of years with some significant work, and we believe have to produce a security safety contract that is, as I shared initially, a significant departure from what we have had before. It's improved in particular because of the comprehensive assessment that was engaged by an independent voice that drew in lots and lots of voices from throughout our campus community. We did engage in a very competitive and rigorous RFP process that had other providers, but this is the proposal that had the best score to move forward. And we believe that this contract provides expertise at the highest level, and that we use the independent resources, as in Chief Medrano and others that have assisted us in putting together a proposal that we believe represents the interest of the district at a value that we believe provides support to what we're trying to indeed achieve without compromising. And we will not compromise the safety and health of our students and of our faculty and our staff. We are, in order to ensure the accountability component on behalf of the district, we will provide some additional hires to the district, a director and a manager that will be in charge of providing oversight, supervision, and support to this particular and deployment of this particular contract. You've seen how we have very well defined performance metrics for accountability, the engagement plan, the relief factor that allows for a minimum staffing levels at our colleges of 24/7, and perhaps some more, and most importantly, a shift in changing and supporting and really drawing attention to the importance of a community service philosophy that I think, as seen there, represents a change in culture for both parties, for both our institution and for the Sheriff's Department. And we believe that through the deployment of this particular contract, we can become a national model that represents several of the best practices for campus safety and security in indeed the nation. So our recommendation, and this is the last slide for the board, our recommendation is to have the board consider authorizing this particular contract for 5 years, beginning July 1st of this year through June 30th of 2027. The funding is through our unrestricted general fund at the cost that you see there for the first year. So Dr. Buelna, that concludes our presentation, and we can certainly are interested in hearing from the board and can looking forward to hearing your questions, reactions, and I believe, if I recall, that the student trustee was up first, but I'll turn it to you, Dr. Buelna.
Absolutely, student trustee was first, and seeing no hands. Oh no, trustee Eno. I was going to go second, but trustee Eno had her hand up first. So then I'll have a question after trustee Eno. Then I'm assuming a few trustee hands will go up after that.
I have my hand up, President Buelna.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Student trustee.
Yeah, so my question was towards the risk assessment. How exactly is that defined for these shows? How is the process carried out? What exactly are they looking for when they determine these risks? Just clarification on that.
Dr. Dis, can you assist with that, or Chief Medrano, the risk assessment component, if I understand the question correct?
Are you talking with the mental health, the HEAT team, or maybe I'm not clear?
Well, I wasn't clear on that. I'm not sure if it was related to specifically the HEAT team or if it was the risk assessment for the individual colleges for either mental health situations or involvement of the Sheriff's Department on a armed level.
Yeah, I understand your question now. The risk assessment report that's required within 120 days of the contract is what you're referring to. Yeah, so the Sheriff's Department is going to be required to look at each campus and provide a risk assessment report, and that spans a lot of different areas. It's everything from active shooter to emergency preparedness to vulnerabilities, site vulnerabilities, and everything in between. So the assessment is comprehensive to look at all vulnerabilities within the college for safety and security, so that the district can align, its security plan with those vulnerabilities that are identified.
And I guess an extension of that question is, has the district done risk assessments like that in the past, where they've looked at the individual campuses and seen things where it's like, okay, that seems like it could be potentially dangerous for students. We need to act on this as soon as possible at least within the assessment time span that we have. Have we had assessments like that in the past?
Yes, Jensen Hughes did an assessment, not as a comprehensive, hazard and risk mitigation assessment, but there are components of that in the Jensen Hughes report. This will be much more detailed, focusing on a campus by campus basis, sort of very at a granular level.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Student trustee, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. And after my question, so it'll be the lineup will be Trustee Eno, Trustee Vela, myself, Trustee, and then Trustee Vettis. So Trustee Eno.
We seem to have lost Trustee Eno.
Okay, so I'll go on with my question with regard, and I may have missed this, so I apologize.
Trustee Buena, I think you said I would go before you.
Oh, Trustee Vela.
Okay. Oh, Trustee Eno's back. Okay.
Okay. Trustee Eno.
Sorry, I lost sound. Go. Can you go? I'll go.
Okay. Okay. Trustee Vela.
Okay, really quick. Is the mental health for all of the schools within the city of Los Angeles, and you know, what are we doing in order to help the students that, you know, we've encountered and helped after they leave the colleges? Can you answer that really quick?
Yes, it's a good question. So, you know, so the heat deputies and MET is a sort of a triage, but the next handoff is working with the Department of Mental Health and the clinicians for longer term case follow-up. The activities at the college level are trying to do early identification, responding to you know, information that is provided to them, incident response, follow up at, you know, sort of first stage level. But longer term case management moves towards clinician work, as well as working with the Department of Mental Health for long-term case management, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and let me just say that it has been done before. We have, at least for me, if you guys could look into, you know, the district could look into, you know, involving DMH at the county for discussions, because when at Montebello School District, when we actually had 4 dedicated social workers, by the way, that were funded by Supervisor Molina. They're still funded by the county at Montebello Unified. That same model got replicated at LAUSD, except that LAUSD became too expensive for the county. So LAUSD ended up, you know, kind of pitching in, let's say, for half of it. And so the case studies, I'm sorry, the casework at our district, I would like to see some actual casework going on in order to move forward and, you know, kind of integrate our student after they emancipate from us. And, you know, and this kind of goes into why we're going more this way versus the patrol side, right, and deployment, which I've questioned, which leads me to, you know, wanting to understand. And again, you know, for me, when we're looking at that clause where you're talking about relief and the fact that the district wants 24-hour surveillance, you know, just about 10 months ago, our facilities department came to us and asked us to approve a private security bench to protect our own investments of construction, because they felt that the sheriff's department was not there 24 hours a day. You know, looking over at night, you know, at night, as you know, a lot of copper gets stolen. That's been a trend in construction. So I really need to see that this contract, I'm gonna, you know, advocate that we continue to keep this private security bench to protect our investments in construction, but certainly not try to utilize them if we have a contract like this, right? Because we need to get our bang for the buck on this particular issue. So explain to me, when there's 40% of you know, students back, when we have, you know, and you know, I'm being straight out here, not every college campus is the same. I don't know, you know, is Pierce at night really dangerous next to Woodland Hills versus another? And I'm not singling out demographics, simply, you know, why do we need this 24-hour stuff when we only have 40% students back? Is it because we're trying to protect our colleges from avoiding vandalism altogether? Homelessness, why is the district asking for this type of, 24-hour? For me, I would like to see less patrol during off hours and more patrol while our students are there. Again, I'm only thinking because I'm not sure, because you said it yourself, Ed, you said that if we were to have, that's a big cost of why we're paying so much today if were this to pass, because you're saying we're asking for 24-hour kind of patrol, but yet I'm hearing stories that there is no 24-hour patrol. That's why we're hiring people to take care of at night our construction sites, right? So, explain kind of why this is all happening. And Chancellor, maybe a question for you. Can we afford to not have patrol at all at night? Just a question here, Thank you.
So I can address the.
You're muted.
Thank you. Interesting question. So when I first got here, I did a little bit of trying to understand the security makeup for Build LACCD, and the Sheriff's Department have only been providing auxiliary security services for the Build sites. Most recently at the Southgate site. It is my understanding, talking with the Builds team at length about this, is that each of the next level contractors are required for providing site security. They're supposed to hire their own security during their contract period. The times where there's some gaps in one provider coming in another, the Sheriff's Department have been on an ad hoc basis providing security. That has not been assigned. Those sites have not been assigned their responsibility for primary security. And I know because I visited all the sites and that's a little bit of a different question.
But aren't those sites that are away from our current campuses, right? Because if there's current construction inside a current campus, then the sheriff would be there anyway. I guess that's the difference. Is that what you're trying to explain? Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So like there's a remote sites, two for one obviously Southgate's the most obvious example, right?
Right.
Okay, so with regards to 24-hour patrol, so the district has nine campuses and a couple satellite campuses and facilities. The vast majority of the crime that is occurring on these campuses occurs during early morning hours, and those crimes range everything from vandalism to major thefts, burglaries, those kind of things. Violent crime on the campuses is very low, very low, which is great. And those types of activities occur when people are there, and that usually is between day watch and in the sort of the mid watch shifts. The district has to protect a lot of assets, and those assets are spread on some campuses. Each environment is a little different. Some campuses may be very spread out, but as you mentioned, Trustee, their areas may not necessarily be as impacted by crime. Other areas are smaller, denser, but are in areas where the crime is much higher.
And could there be a scenario where during these early morning hours, and you're probably talking 2 a.m. to like 6 a.m. kind of thing, would there be a scenario where that's where we have our security officers and not necessarily our deputies patrolling, or is it always security officers patrolling during those morning hours?
And you're
muted.
I mean to stop doing that. One of the things that we did to lower the cost, as you noticed, the deputies are the highest cost items. On night shift, we don't have deputies primarily assigned for the patrolling and asset protection. Those are security officers. We only have 2 deputies assigned to rovers. So if the security officers need additional assistance, they can roll over there. The other 2 shifts do have deputies assigned. So that was considered and reduce cost on the AM shift. So I understand. It's like, well, why do we have to make it is one a deterrence, but 2, the level that the amount of resources and infrastructure that is being protected is pretty significant. And having 3 personnel, even at the smallest campus, it is sufficient, but certainly not overstaffed, because remember, they're still required to monitor phones, alarm systems, fire alarms, all of the other things that are required. But those are the only people there on the campus to do that, and the sheriffs provide that those resources as well.
Thank you.
Let's go back to Trustee Eno because you got
Yeah, it went mute all of a sudden and I couldn't hear anyone. So
yeah. So go ahead, Trustee Eno.
thank you. I thank you for all of the presentations. I've been sitting in this seat now for 2 months, and so I'm coming in after 18 months of preparation for all of this. So I really appreciate everyone's time and dedication to it. I did have some, just in general, I think safety is paramount, right, for all folks on the campuses and working for the college and in the area. So I recognize the urgency, and the deadline for the current contract is June 30th. So we're getting very close to it. I think also just in general, my concern is for long-term community holistic safety is key too, right? So we have this immediate contract in front of us. And so I think had I been part of the process a little earlier in the game before the RFP came out, I would have really liked to have seen something like a 3+2. I see, 3-year contract plus a 2-year renewal, mainly because of the ambition of the changes, which I really like, right? I think a lot of the changes that Dr. Nish worked towards and the group, just to have it more community oriented and the detail. I guess my concern for that too is capacity. With talking to Dr. Nish about it, a lot of the responsibility does fall on the district as well as the sheriffs, like a partnership. And so, with the VP of Administrative Services and the president's kind of taking hold and responsibility and accountability for how each campus is led, I just want to, I know some of the presidents are here, and I don't know, how they've been vetted or onboarded or what that process will be like in the transition, but do I just call you Edward? I don't know how to address you. Or
Ed is fine, thank you.
Ed, yeah, have you engaged in those conversations with what that transition's gonna look like, and how will they be supported in this process? Because capacity is a huge issue, right? As we know, any person working these days, what they think they're going to be doing and what they've been doing and having to manage in life is just very overwhelming and a lot to manage and to take this on. It's a very important thing, and we want to make sure it's done well and for the safety of everyone that's involved. So have you reached out to those parties as well to discuss what this is going to look like in implementation?
Well, we have had meetings with DAC. We've had meetings with all of the VPs. We've had meetings with all of the college presidents regarding this contract, the scope of work, the changes that I've highlighted in this presentation to solicit their feedback. But as you keenly point out, this needs to be coordinated, and no one needs additional levels of responsibility. That's why I strongly believe that the district's decision to hire a safety and security director to help the college presidents and the VPs to ensure that the performance metrics, the requirements in this contract are being implemented on their colleges, and to be that resource when things are not going right, to work with the sheriff's captain to make take on corrective measures is really effective. I've seen this in my close to 9-10 months here, that soliciting feedback from at the college level and then working with the captain to try to correct those measures has been effective, and hopefully has been a reduction in the workload for some of the college administrators.
Okay, thank you for that. Also, I guess money is a concern always, right? Because our jobs are the fiduciary responsibility, but at the same time too, safety is also more important than the money in general. And I did talk to the chancellor, and it is 3% of our budget, so fairly nominal in the grand scheme of things. But that's only for the first year. Is there an estimated outlook of cost for year 2 through 5?
Ms. Gordon, I believe we have budgeted for that, but can you relieve us with that?
Yes, based on the information historical information, we expect 4 to 5% increase over the term of annually over the term of the 5-year contract. And we do budget for that.
And then
Those
there's
are
no
mostly
way-
personnel costs.
personnel.
Right, and that's what it is. Mostly it's they only the practice has been only to pass on the increases in salary for their officers. And then there's maybe an increase in the insurance liability that is also part of the contract.
Mhm. Okay, I think those are my immediate questions right now, so I'll pass the mic to the others.
Okay. Trustee Vettis?
Okay, thank you. Few comments and then hoping to be able to make a move forward here. So first off, I think this presentation that we had today and this conversation that we're having is absolutely necessary and valuable. And to be honest, it probably should have happened a couple of months ago when the RFP was first coming forward, so we can get to this fine-tuned perspective of a vote and approval. We're basically 21 days from the end of the current public safety contract. I think generally comments and efforts. I mean, we did have two trustees that sort of reviewed the RFP, but to really come to understand, what we're doing and where we're going and what makes us feel comfortable. I think, we're on the edge and running out of time here with honestly no clear alternative if it's not this. And that in itself is very challenging. I raised earlier during the budget presentations, because I think there's been two sort of factors that are sometimes push and pull against each other. One is the kind of service expectation, the demand for culture, the demand for accountability, the demand for the way that we're responding to concerns about police behavior in our nation or around our areas. We have incidences in Los Angeles. I think we point to that are related to the department, but we've had a very good working relationship with the Bureau. So as we add things that seek to ensure accountability, that seek to establish a culture on the campus that's more of a guardian style public safety for our students and faculty, sometimes those come with attached cost. This sort of dynamic to push down cost is a counter factor, right? We want to be sure that the costs are in line and that we have a big number that's going to the department right now. I pointed out on the budget presentation that Ms. Gordon made, when we first had that big jump in 15, that's 9% and 13%, I believe is what was listed there. That's a very significant jump beyond just labor costs, beyond just sort of a functional contract. But that was at our request, and it was very specific to mental health concerns that we continue to have that are elements of this contract. I'm going to also say this. I think the way we deal with our students, the way we deal with our workforce, our faculty and our staff is also sometimes a little bit different when the way we deal with the homeless community, those that are struggling with addiction or in and around our campuses. And that sometimes we don't have closed campuses, they are open. There are incidences and moments when, the very challenging conditions of Los Angeles's homeless community stands in sort of direct challenge to the kind of campus environments that we want to be able to create and the kind of rules that we have in place to ensure safety all the way across. And that's being debated at the city and the county as well. There's no easy solution there, but how this contract relates to not only just handling our students, but handling the community at large are things that are very important to us. And I think that the accountability piece, hearing the termination clause, hearing the desire to have continued reports, I think is valuable and important to me. I would say this, if I was to go back and redo this RFP, I probably would pull out the mental health piece. And we would like to, as opposed to having it be subcontracted from the sheriff's contract down, I would almost rather have a very direct relationship with the County of Los Angeles and another entity. So as we're looking at the sheriffs for the deputy for the security services, could also have a very direct line item that goes to county mental health. And that might have been a change, but they're all in one place. And so sometimes we assume that because we're trying to do good when it comes to mental health and on these kind of other aspects, that it's related to sheriffs, which sometimes has the notation of being harder core, interactions that are out there. So, with that, I mean, and literally because we're on this verge here, I want to offer a couple of comments, and then I'd like to make a motion, and certainly we can continue our discussion as the motion's on the floor. One, I'd like to say that through the years, and Mr. Medrano, you've done well with your firm in pointing out to some of our administrative flaws and deficiencies in terms of that. Some of it we're on this contract, we're placing it on the sheriff's onus, but I also want to place this on our responsibility, on our shoulders. I think we need to have very specific training with our administrative VPs. We have lots of turnovers over the last few years. I think it would be important to have them trained, instructed on best management practices. And frankly, we're talking about a security director, which we don't currently have on the books, as a coordination entity and a support system for that. We need, I think the effectiveness of this contract is going to really in the end, be about the effectiveness of our administrative VPs and how we approach the everyday understanding of this contract. They will breed confidence of how we're effectively managing this contract forward. So those pieces, as we consider this contract, and if it does move forward, that in itself is something internal to us. It's not the way the sheriffs is organizing themselves. It's how we organize ourselves. And if it's not going to be the administrative VP, maybe it's a security director on each of the campuses. That's all internal. And if it's just the two positions that we've called out that are emergency services or security or whatever we're calling them exactly, those are key and vital positions. And frankly, we're not hired yet. I think we're in the process of hiring at least one of those. And so we have to do this contract without essentially our key personnel involved with that. And that's the challenge here. But having said that, like I said, we're 21 days out. I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract as presented, with the caveat that a very intensive training take place for administrative VPs, and that we get updated on a regular basis about security directors and essentially what is going to be our new approach internally to manage this contract. So that's my motion.
Just to be clear, and Trustee Henderson, and then Student Trustee, you'll be next because we can put the additional question and comment.
A second to that motion?
Hold on for a second. We have the business item as authorization, authorized general law enforcement and security service agreement. General Counsel, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Can we add the additional items that were mentioned by Trustee Vettis, or I just don't want to change any contract legally. I just want to make sure your opinion is on the record.
It is a change to the motion, so the motion is being amended. And so to add the VP training, and there has to be some direction as to who would do that. And it looks like that's something that the district would do rather than the sheriffs. And then the report back would also be something that the district would do rather than the sheriff. So it seems that the motion as amended is acceptable, but I'd recommend that you finish with the questions first before taking up the motion and the second.
Trustee Vettis, would you mind holding off? I won't take any other motions other than your motion until the questions are done.
I don't have a problem with that. I was going by regular practice of a motion and a second in discussion. So, but no, however you choose to move,
right,
that's fine.
I get that. It's just the extra items. I don't want to mix them in and someone have an issue with it later, whether correct or incorrect. I just want to be as safe as possible. So we'll go on the trustee. We'll go on to finish the questions. Then we'll take on your motion. Trustee Henderson.
Thank you, point of clarification. Yes, is this now discussion on Trustee Vettis's motion?
No, we're going to finish Q&A.
Got it.
Okay. Trustee Henderson.
Thank you, Trustee Boulna. I have a couple of questions. I hope that they're yes or no. One, since the heat component has been added to the contract, is that the majority of the cost now that it's been added back to this? Okay.
No, the answer is no, Trustee Henderson.
Okay. Is the proposed length of the contract a factor in the cost? The 5 years versus say if we did a 3-year contract and went back to review, is that
The
a
5-year,
possibility? So right now we're being asked to approve a 5-year contract.
that is correct.
Okay, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable doing that. We've had contracts with the sheriffs before, so I want to make it very clear for the public and for my colleagues. I don't have a issue personally or professionally dealing with going into a contract with the sheriff. What I want to make sure is that we as a board have assurances that what we're saying we want, what this contract is stipulating will be done is actually done. I feel comfortable that there are some degree of metrics in place. What I'm saying is this is a new thing. Dr. Nish has said several times, this is that we're entering into a contract in a way that we have not done in previous years. I'm concerned about just a blanket 5-year where we're getting reports, but we're not really going back reviewing. So would it be a possibility to have a 3-year or even a 2-year and then review for the remainder? And then after that, we can go into 5-year contracts because this is different.
If I may, Chancellor, we negotiated a 5-year contract because this does require significant infrastructure investment on the part of the sheriffs. And so, of course, they are willing to make that infrastructure investment, understanding that we would have a 5-year contract. To your point, Trustee Henderson, if we find as we move through this 5 years that the work is not being done to our satisfaction, then we will utilize the termination clauses that were discussed that allow us to make a transition. So I feel very confident that we can enter into a 5-year contract, that we can bring you on a regular basis how this contract is performing, how both sides are working through this partnership. And if we feel that this partnership is not yielding the results we want, we do certainly have avenues for us to make a change prior to the 5-year deadline.
And I just have 2 quick. The initial proposed cost of 29 million, when we return to 175% or 100% capacity, will that proposed cost be capped, or will we then be looking at more than 29 million?
With respect to the minimum deployment level, that was mutually agreed on between the district and the sheriff's department, and any change to that deployment level must be mutually agreed upon. We will continually monitor how that minimum staffing deployment is working. We do anticipate about 50% of all of our sections to be on site in the fall. We do anticipate that that will increase over time, but that does not necessarily mean that we'll have a 1-to-1 increase in the deployment. But we will look at it, and we will bring to the board every year the cost of the contract anticipated for the next year. I do not anticipate that it will jump up to 29.2 million. As Ms. Gordon has indicated, we're anticipating more on the order of a 4 to 5% increase. And of course, any deployment changes must be mutually agreed upon and would be presented to the board as well.
Thank you. And my final question is, I guess, is more of a comment. I appreciate the fact that the college presidents will have a say in working with the sheriffs to create their community engagement plans. The question to that is, once those plans are created and agreed upon with the sheriff, will they be presented to the trustees so that we can see them?
We can certainly do that, Trustee Anderson. That's not a problem at all. We'll note that.
Thank you.
We'll note that as a follow-up.
Thank you.
Let's go back to student trustee.
So I guess I would have 2 questions. There was a survey, you guys sent out surveys to the individual colleges. I guess which year was that when the survey was initially sent out to gather that data? And within the results, it was over 77% of the people who participated in the survey said that they wanted armed security on campus. So what exactly would be the definition of armed? Would that be in the form of stun guns, actual loaded ammunition. Clarification on those 2 points.
Okay, Dr. Nish?
The survey was conducted through Hillard Hines, now Jensen Hughes. The survey was conducted in 2021. It was about March, April, when the survey was conducted. And there were over 7,800 participants. And it was over 74% of those participants in the survey indicated that a sworn armed service was their number one choice. And by armed, we would understand that to be guns that a sworn officer would have. And so that's very specific. That was the overwhelming top choice for the survey respondents. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I just wanted clarification on that. And for my second question, it would pertain to the cadets that are also outlined within the contract. As far as the HEAT program, because you already have an outline for how that's going to be set up for the sheriffs and the hired employees, but for the student cadets, how would they know, what kind of training are they going to get as far as managing the mental health or situations that they can encounter in that kind of capacity? Because I've encountered situations and I've spoken to students who have been in those situations and they reported back to their leading officer. And in those cases, they were either discouraged for trying to act on those situations, or they didn't know how to handle them. So they were effectively threatened into not treating the situations for what they should be. So I would say, how are we training the actual police cadets? What are our expectations for them? And just more clarification on what those expectations are and how how their overseers are supposed to be overseeing them in their capacities.
I'll ask Dr. Nish to fill in some of the blanks and Chief Medrano as well. But we're not going to put any student cadet in harm's way for areas that they're not trained to do. That's a risk and liability that we're not going to ask them to do. So that's, I want to make that point clear. With the shift, right now, the cadets are our employees. When they move over to the Sheriff's Department come January 1st, per the proposal of next year, they will become Sheriff's Department employees, as such, be subject to the kinds of rigors and training that the Sheriff's Department has. So Chief or Dr. Nish, can you fill in from there? But I want to make sure that I underscore the point. We're not going to put a student in front of any situation that they're not trained for, or have to assess anything that's beyond their educational capability. Chief?
Yeah, the cadets will be used primarily for working the campus security offices, doing escorts, unlocking doors, providing assistance, non-enforcement measures whatsoever, directing traffic if necessary. They will receive training from the Sheriff's Department, which will be considerably more than currently provided to cadets, which will also include basic de-escalation and safety and dealing with difficult situations. That training will be ongoing and working under the direct supervision of the team leaders and the supervisors assigned to the campuses.
Thank you. And I guess with that, no more questions. And are we ready to move on to act on Trustee Vera's motion?
Oh, wait, hold on. Thank you, student trustee. There's some more questions though. There's more questions here. So one, are there any other trustees that have questions? Because I have a few questions as well. I always, student trustee, I try and wait to the end to ask some of my questions. Trustee Andra and Moreno, both of you have not asked questions. I just wanted to make sure before we get into the resolution, do you have any other questions?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Chair Bono. I asked all my questions at the regular board meeting last week. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. So with regard to, so if you're a member of the public and you're looking at today's presentation, I guess this would be to Chancellor and Mr. Medrano. What is, if you're a member of the public, what would you say is different from this presentation, listening to what you heard last week? Was there any reduction in price from last week? What how is the value for the district improved from last week to this week?
I will certainly start with that. Well, there's been considerable discussion with the Sheriff's Department since last week about the comments, responsibilities of the contract itself, the interest of the board itself. You made your interest very, very clear. So we had lots of clarification to our expectations of performance, lots of conversations with respect to our performance standards and those sorts of matters. So I think it was from last week to this week, we've had, I think, an opportunity to have significant conversations with the projected and recommended a service provider. With respect to the costs and whatnot, that was done from April until through now. When we brought this initial proposal to you, it was a $29 million proposal for this first year that now rests at the 25.4 with the addition of the cadets, and as to why it sort of moved over the $25 million mark. So those are, I would say, would be some of the Dr. Nish, you were part, and Chief Medrano, part of those conversations.
As the chancellor answers that question, let me refine a little more. Mm-hmm. The only purpose in us in the board asking questions is that at least we hope that the institution be improved, and that the institution, even though we care about the vice presidents and the presidents, but has there been a different? Well, actually, the question is, I actually take that back. The question is targeted for them. Is there a sense of more information being provided to the presidents on the nature of this contract, or the vice presidents or the deans or everyone what is the effect on the institution, people on the ground, with regard to this conversation?
Well, I mean, if I understand the question, well, I think they're all online right now, keenly interested in providing safety and security. So the impact is that there's greater clarity as to the level of performance and level of metrics, accountability, reporting, the minimum staffing levels. And I think it provides them a higher level of assurance that they're going to have the safety and security services at each of their campuses. So I think there's a greater awareness, a greater sense of understanding, and ultimately they understand that their responsibilities as well in deploying a local campus safety environment through the safety plans, security plans that have been outlined in the proposal itself. So they possess clearly an important responsibility in the carrying out of this particular contract.
Okay, thank you, Chan. And Mr. Medrano and Deputy Chancellor, the Chancellor asked you to address it, and I cut off to refine the question. Would you like to add anything to that?
If I may, Trustee Buelna, I would concur with the Chancellor. Certainly what has happened in the past week is a much greater heightened awareness of the importance of safety and security on our campuses. Certainly there's been a lot more scrutiny of the appendices, which of course have been provided to all of the administrators of the district. So I think that what's dramatically happened in the last week is that the importance of this contract has certainly received even more attention by our rank and file, and certainly the administrators.
Thank you, Deputy Chancellor. Mr. Medrano, would you like to add to that?
I don't really have anything else to add. I think Dr. Nish really described it. The real issues here is the level of accountability, and the measures that we put in were thoughtfully considered to ensure that the performance of this contract is much different than the district has experienced in the past.
Okay. With regard, the question of investments was brought on board. With regard to any investments, and maybe I heard the word wrong, that the Sheriff's Department makes, what do we mean? Because I see when I hear of the investments, I'm thinking the human capital investments. Are there specific equipment? What are those? What are those? In just a 5-second answer.
Sure, real quick. I can do that really quick. Body-worn video deployment for the number of personnel is a significant infrastructure investment. The Sheriff's Department will now be providing all of the vehicles that the district had been previously provided, all the golf carts, all the motorized little carts. That's going to be the radio systems throughout all of the district are going to be upgraded to provide universal communications throughout the district, which will all support the Security Operations Center, which is a significant investment. And the infrastructure investment that's going to be required to the CAD and RMS systems are just some of the major investments that the Sheriff's Department will have to do.
Okay, now, and maybe I'm being naive in this this question, but they're being reimbursed for that, or at the end of the day, we're paying for that, right? And I don't mean that, you know, to sound negative or anything. I'm just saying we're actually providing that investment, or are they providing that investment? How is that fleshing out in terms of inputs and outputs?
There are no additional costs for the investments coming to the district as a result of providing all of their officers body-worn cameras, the vehicles, the investment in the communications, or the CAD system requirements. So there's nothing in the provision in this contract that charges the districts for those upgrades.
So it's an in-kind. So it's an in-kind. In-kind, if you had to add it in, it would probably add a significant amount of value, but it's not, we're not actually reimbursing for that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. With regard to, and let me go to in the investigations component, and I think I heard it, maybe I didn't. So let's just say, for instance, at one of college X, there's an investigation for fraud, right? For whatever, $1 fraud, $1 million fraud, doesn't really matter. Is any part of this contract, does any part of this contract have to do with the sheriff investigating anything, or is this purely a policing, non-investigatory contract?
Good question. This contract provides for detectives. So any case that is initiated out of a college will be vertically processed through the Sheriff's Department, CCB, to a detective assigned exclusively to college-related crimes, who will work collaboratively with the District Attorney's Office to render charges if appropriate, which is a pretty significant investment in that all of the crimes that are occurring are going to get due follow-up attention to someone who is assigned only to do this for the district.
So if you steal a Twinkie from one of our colleges that's investigated, that's surrounded by LAPD, your crime will be investigated by LA Sheriff's Department and then go to LA County District Attorney's Office. Yes, and that's a great, you make a great point here. Having a centralized investigative bureau does not require the agencies that surround the colleges to be part, and you get very customized service, because that's all they do is investigate and follow up on your crimes. Okay, was that component part of the previous contract?
That component was part of the contract prior to the renegotiated contract in 2020, December of 2020. The entire investigative unit was taken out, and we currently do not have it.
Okay, so the gap in the investigative unit was post-COVID.
It was coincided with COVID. It happened effective January 2021 through present.
Okay, so was that coincidence or?
No, sir, it was not coincidence, because we had such a limited number of persons on the campus. And since we had been asked by this board to have a COVID appropriate deployment, right, that was one of the services that we gave up in order to significantly reduce the cost. The annual cost went from 25.8 million down to 19.5, and that was one of the major reductions.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So the investigative component, is that someone who is that a hard cost, or is it occurring per the investigation? Let's just say one year we don't want it, 200 investigations. Do we still have it within this cost, or does that cost increase?
The cost is in the contract. It does not increase or decrease based on the level of activity. I will tell you that the Sheriff's Department probably would have not agreed to do the elimination of the investigation unless they were going to refer some of those cases to the other agencies, because there was even though there's less people, there's still a number of property related crimes that were investigated, and you get a person that's following up on every one of those, many of those which will probably not be investigated by the local agencies just because they prioritize those type of cases, and you probably would not get a lot of follow-up.
So with regard to the investigative component, which is very important to us, does that include the cyber, because you mentioned some cyber component to this, does that include some cyber crimes component? So is it wherever we are a victim of crime as a district versus someone locking our systems? What is ultimately the level? Because generally when we think of crime, we think of street level crime. But crime occurs, white collar crime, and crime can occur out of Russia taking our money here and locking it out. So what does this contract cover in terms of all of the crime, or is there a cap and then it goes to another agency?
There's no cap that the sheriff's department have, in addition to their detectives, provided crime scene, crime lab services. In fact, they were at Valley College today or yesterday. They provide access to all of their bureaus, including their cyber bureaus, their violent crime bureaus. All of them work collaboratively. There's no chargeback to the district when other assistance is provided. So I mean, in terms of all, they pretty much handle all crimes. When you're talking about cyber related activities, depending on if there's a possibility for them to help, yes, they'd be willing to help. I'm not sure that they've had that occurrence yet.
Okay, that was it. Is there any other question or comment from the trustees before we get into the resolution? Then I'll turn it back to Trustee Vettis for his resolution. Seeing none, Trustee Vettis, do you want to go ahead and reiterate your resolution? Or we have the resolution on the floor. I think you wanted to add to the resolution.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just make the motion to, as presented here, authorize general law enforcement and security services agreement with the County of Los Angeles and the LACCD for not to exceed of 25,441 as listed there, 61618. Subsequently, if the motion is adopted, if we can instruct the chancellor to coordinate training services for presidents, vice presidents, and everybody who is associated with the coordination and successful accountability, or to ensure successful accountability of this contract on our side.
Okay.
I second that.
Hold on, General Counsel, I have a question, because I with regard to the second part, Trustee Vettis was clear he wants to move this resolution forward as is, and after the resolution passes, to have the other items on the discussion. However, the other items aren't on the agenda. So would it be better to do an add-on like Trustee Vettis did originally, because we don't have those other items on the agenda, and I'd rather have them and be able to discuss. I just want to procedurally make sure we're okay.
Well, it's still just an amended motion, so he's making an amendment to the existing motion.
No.
Sorry, I'm not making an
not.
amendment. I'm making a motion, and then providing direction to the chancellor to ensure training, coordination, and accountability with our presidents and vice presidents for this contract.
Okay, so it's just offering, what I'm saying is just offering direction.
Yes.
It's not as part of the comments component of this resolution.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Yes, so noted and so noted, and it'll get done.
Okay, and for the record, Trustee Moreno did second the motion. Are there any additional comments? I have one additional comment, but I'll wait for the other. Let's see, I'm looking for hands. Oh, Trustee Henderson.
Would still like for us to consider a 3-year with a review, not necessarily to consider ending the contract so much, but just for the comfort. I'm not sure that all of us really are in agreement with a 5-year contract, and to prevent abstentions and to make sure that we're all on the same page, a 3-year with a review again, not a 3-year to consider ending the contract, but just a guaranteed review and then move on to 2.
Like an option, like a 3-year with an option based on certain things.
Yes.
President Buona.
Give me one second, Trustee Vela, to General Counsel. Is that possible?
It would be an amendment. So since Trustee Veras has made the motion and it's been seconded, now this is a request to amend an existing motion. It can either be done by a friendly amendment or voted on separately.
Okay, but actually my question is functionally within the contract, from a contracts perspective, how would we handle that if 4 trustees made the amendment? And I'll call on you 1 second, Deputy Chancellor. I always want to go first to the attorney.
Okay, moving out of the Brown Act, the Roberts Rule issue. The issue of changing the term is problematic because we said in the RFP it was a 5-year contract. So now we can't change it now, having submitted it to the public as a 5-year. There may be contractors out there who would say, if I had known it was a 3-year RFP, I may have bid on it, but I didn't. So we can't change the underlying RFP terms at this time.
And I'm going to push back a little from I was going to say Trustee Counsel. But if 4 board members did do that and did accept the motion, what effect would that have?
Well, you are changing the contract terms, and of course that would leave it to the sheriff. They might not want to invest in a 3-year or make the initial investment for just a 3-year contract. So we're basically reopening the contract and for new negotiation with the sheriff. We wouldn't have a complete deal if we made such a significant change to the contract. It would go back to the sheriff.
Okay, so it would have the effect of saying, you have a 3-year contract. Well, we wanted a 5-year contract, and now that discussion needs to occur. And I'll get to you right now, Trustee Vela. I just wanted to make sure that we talk through what the friendly amendment would do operationally if we did that. Trustee Vela, and I promised also to get to a Deputy Chancellor as well, and I'll do that after Trustee Vela.
Yeah, just 2-pronged question. One, did the RFP disclose that even though it's a 5-year, the board has the right to alter that term? One, was that stipulated in the RFP?
No. The only way we would get out of the contract is to terminate the contract.
Okay. And then second, would a 3-year with a 2-annual renewal term as a total of 5 years suffice to meet the 5-year clause on the RFP?
No, not the way the RFP was written. Mr. Jeter is completely correct that this is written as a 5-year investment from whatever service provider. So this is how we wrote it. It was how it was presented, and it's how the public responded.
Okay, so I did not know this, and I apologize that the RFP had a 5-year. When was that told to the board?
That was discussed, and the RFP, when it was made public, we made sure that the board was aware of that. That was a publicly available document. It's very difficult in order to obtain these types of services to do so in anything less than a 5-year, because there is considerable investment on the part of the providers. If we were to amend this to 3 years, it would effectively mean that the negotiations would have to be completely reopened. And so that this has been explained by Mr. Jeter, but that was why the 5-year was part of the RFP. Remember, the RFP went out late, I believe in December of 2021.
Yeah, but Deputy Chancellor, in the steering committee of the RFP, both Nichelle and I, Trustee Henderson and I, did not want a 5-year. We said 3-year with 2-year renewal.
I do not recall that. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we need some minutes, but I do recall that. So that's the reason there's concern. So now moving forward, you know, I just wanted to clarify that point, but appreciate the feedback on the legality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Chancellor, I'll call you right.
Trustee
Hold on,
Bona, can I
hold on.
ask a question?
Yes, hold on, Trustee Bettis. Deputy Chancellor, before Trustee Vela, I was going to ask you to answer some of the question. Did you address what you felt you needed to address?
Yes, sir. And in fact, Mr. Jetter said he was much more eloquent. I would have said something similar.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Bettis?
Functionally, since there's a 120-day termination, no cost termination, could we functionally view the administration of this contract as an annual review by our administration of this contract to see if we're getting what we have asked for? So functionally, even though it's a 5-year contract, that 120-day termination is actually, since it's no cause, can be at the discretion of the district, and actually is an extremely powerful tool if this contract isn't functioning as promised, or we aren't getting the sort of value or whatever. I mean, of course, it goes on the reverse side too. But if we wanted to functionally look at it as an annual review, the 120 days is also, honestly important in a sense, because if we do act, we have sufficient time to find alternatives. Right now, like I said, as we're going through our debate and conversation, we're 21 days out for the termination of the current public contract or public safety contract. But if we find in some part and shape that they are not upholding, they are not doing it in the ways that we wish, that we have challenges, it's problematic, we can issue the 120 days at any point in the 5 years. But if we want to take it as an annual review, I think that's just the way that we would view it, but it is functionally within the terms of the contract, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Trustee Vettis. If we're finding at any point in the contract that is not to our performance standards, not to our expectations, we would have those very serious conversations.
Trustee Eno?
Just looking at the 7.0 right of termination clause with 120 days, can you go over that timeline with us just so we get a good idea? Because if it's an academic, or if it's a annual calendar, the renewal is every December to January. Am I correct on that? But the report comes out September 1st, then there's not 120 days to then
Yeah,
to
that
see
would
the
only,
report and then make the decision. I just want to know the timeline for that.
and that would be present in the first year. That is correct. As we're gathering data, Dr. Nish?
Yes, if I may, I understand the question that Trustee Eno is asking. She's asking about the termination clauses as they relate to the reports. There are 3 reports. Of course, there's the monthly. There are 2 annual reports, but they are on different annual basis. There is the calendar annual report, which is due in March. And that was the accumulation of basically everything that they've been doing on the regular components of the contract. So that would work in the July 1 120-day termination option, because you would know in March, if the report was very bad and you thought that you were not able to reconcile performance, you could go ahead and exercise that on July 1. Of course, there's also the 180-day. At any point in time, we could exercise a 180-day termination. And then you asked about the report in September. That is a different report. That is what is called the fiscal year report that's due in September. That report is specific to the emergency preparedness and disaster mitigation work. So that would be a separate item. And if we felt that after that report in September that there were serious issues that could not be reconciled, we of course could exercise again the 180-day. So you have some very good options to leverage the performance of this contract, exercising either the July 1 or at any point in time, the 180-day exit.
Okay, thank you. See no questions. Trustee Henderson, did you have an amendment? No amendment? If not, then we're gonna move on to vote.
Move on.
Okay, are there any other questions related to this contract? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on the motion brought on by Steve Vettis, authorized general law enforcement security service agreement with the County of Los Angeles and Los Angeles Community and the Los Angeles Community College District for total not to exceed cost $25,441,618. Roll call.
Student trustee Callahan's advisory vote.
Abstain.
Thank you. Trustee Boulna,
Yes.
trustee Henderson,
Yes.
trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
trustee Eno,
Abstain.
trustee Moreno,
Yes.
trustee Vela,
Yes.
trustee Vettis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, motion passes. Are there, Chancellor, are there any persons or Lupe, are there any, now that we have Lupe back, are there any persons signed up to address the board of trustees regarding matters not on the agenda?
No, sir. No one of which she signed up.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Do we have a chance to do future announcements?
You know what's not on the agenda, trustee? I'm just kidding. Go ahead, trustee.
Yeah, look, I want to say that, I really want to thank Trustee Henderson for her hard work in the committee with staff. I don't think that we have to learn from this in that, number one, I'd like to have a future discussion, and that's why I want to go under future items. To follow up this, let's talk about who we are as a district when it comes to public safety, post-pandemic. We really have a lot of work to do. I know we have a retreat coming up, which I would love for the audience to participate in our retreat in the upcoming, I think it's Saturday, June 24th, Chancellor? I'm not sure.
The 25th, Saturday. The
25th, yes.
Yeah, 10 until 2.
Wonderful. In order to, I know we're going to be discussing the future of the district and who we want to be post-pandemic academically and enrollment-wise. But really, we need to take the time to discuss this public safety component and create some real accountability in order for this contract to, I believe, be successful. And I think it'd be good on both sides, both the Sheriff's Department to be able to prove to us and that they are going to be accountable and do what they said they were going to do, but at the same time for us to continue to hold accountable, demand, and work with the Sheriff's Department and our colleges. So I'm not, I am optimistic in the sense that, we can all come together as trustees and continue the conversation on public safety and really garner and listen to student input in particular, and I want to tell you, Trustee Callahan, that, you abstaining today tells me, that we still need more student input. So thank you so much for let's agenda that in your student committees and let's definitely bring you into those conversations since you represent the hundreds of thousands of students, both part-time and full-time. So I just want us to make sure that we continue this conversation. And so I'd like to ask for a future special board meeting or committee of the whole to discuss public safety. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments before the board, before we do a motion to adjourn? All right, so I do want to thank all Chancellor and all the staff for the time commitment of putting everything together. Mr. Medrano, your hard work in putting this together. Thank you very much. Chancellor, would you like to make any final comment?
No, thank you all for your diligence today. We appreciate your trust and your staff to bring you thoughtful and well-researched recommendations. Appreciate your support today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved,
Trustee Eno, and a second?
Second,
Okay.
Henderson.
Okay. Any objections? All right, seeing none. General Counsel, I don't need to take a roll call, right?
No, without objection, it's sufficient.
Okay,
We'll
without
be adjourned.
objection. Okay. We are adjourned. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, bye.
Thank you.